Okay, so thank you again for joining the webinar today that we are going to present for medical devices and mostly dedicated to self-care medical devices. And we are going to focus now on post-marketing tips and requirements for ensuring the safety and performance of medical devices. So myself, Manolina Kondaksaki, and my colleague Rafaelia Bakasiri, we are going to present the webinar today. I am mostly focused on toxicology and safety aspects of medical device and self-care products. And Rafaelia is an expert on medical devices, the clinical aspects and clinical evaluation and post-marketing clinical as well. PLG Group is a group of companies that can support patient access to safe and effective healthcare solutions by consulting and outsourcing many services throughout the entire product life. We can support you in the product development and throughout the whole life cycle of a product. From all the phases of the development of the healthcare product, from the early stage of the development through the registration, and of course after the marketing and the offering the product to the market. Also, we can offer you borderline assessments for borderline products for the four core healthcare sectors for biopharmaceutical, medical, nutraceutical, and cosmetic products. So in case you are worried which of those categories might your product falls in, you can advise us and give our opinion regarding the claims of the product, the formula of the product, and also the target population and the daily use of the product. Also, PLG offers a market and patient access, like pricing and reimbursement strategy, early access and in-patient engagement, market intelligence, and public affairs, and also regulatory vigilance and quality throughout the manufacturing compliance activities at worldwide and local levels throughout the life cycle of the product. And last but not least, consulting and digital services that can be provided by our experts, navigate you and help you with the strategy and operation of the business and digital transformation, as well as M&As, market entry strategy, and operational excellence. So please be aware that this session will be recorded, and the information that you shared with us, like personal information, like email, will be used to send you afterwards the presentation, and also to keep you informed for our news and updates in the future. Also be on mute during the whole session, and give us your questions afterwards during the chat and the section of question and answers. Thank you all for the participation. Here is our agenda today. So we have we try to divide this section to 7 and 8 different sections. We are going to speak firstly for the post-market surveillance activities, the post-market surveillance system, the post-market surveillance plan and report, what are the periodic safety update reports, and what are the requirements of the manufacturer depending on the class of the medical device, which is the requirements of post-market clinical follow-up and how we collect the data, about the vigilance that is required from MDR, and also the electronic system on vigilance, which is UDAMET. And last, some vigilance feedbacks on how market manufacturers understand the vigilance point and their requirements so far. So if we can check the slides of the whole overview and what are the general requirements imposed by MDR regulation, we could see that the post-marketing surveillance system is obligated to be drafted and keep on the manufacturer safe location, so the access to quality, performance, and safety of the device can be drafted throughout the life cycle after the marketing authorization and certification. Also, the PM's plan is something necessary prior to PMS system, and this is also imposed by MDR from Article 84. PMS report now is also a summary of results and conclusions resulting from the PMS plan, including some CAP activities, and this is also only for Class 1 medical devices. For Class 2A, Class 2B, and Class 3 medical devices, manufacturers are required to draft periodically safety update reports that are the PSURs, and this is imposed by Article 86 from MDR. This is also, as we are going to see later on, something that we assess the benefit and risk of the device. We should document all the sales from the marketing date of the medical devices and the number of patients that might use the medical device. Now the timeline, it is when was the date of application of MDR, May 26 of 2021. And this goes also for medical device that has been certified under the MDD and also the MDR. So all the legacy devices and regulation devices are necessary to follow the post-market surveillance. Here is a brief overview of what are the steps of the surveillance. We should collect the data, and we should identify how we can retrieve all the data coming from patients, healthcare providers, hospitals, or pharmacies, or any clinical trial, or maybe literature. So we should collect all this data and analyze as a second step. So after collecting the data, we should identify any trend, any pattern, or any potential safety issue that can arise from this data. And later on, after the analysis of those data, we should take the action. So if we consider that the benefit-risk ratio is not positive anymore, but might some non-identified risks or some new risks or maybe side effects have come across during the life cycle of the medical devices, then we should act and take the most appropriate measure in order to minimize the risk. This can be as a warning on the leaflet or the label. This also can be a warning and notification to the regulatory authorities or maybe to the specified territory where the medical device has been sold. And after that, we should document all the PMS activities, including the data collection, the analysis we have done, the actions we have taken in a manner that can be appropriate, documented, and can be aligned with the quality management system that we have for the medical devices. Also, the post-market surveillance is directly connected with the ISO 14971, which is about the risk management of our medical devices. So the risk analysis, the risk evaluation, the risk control, and all the necessary steps for the whole risk associated with our medical devices have been well documented. So the post-market surveillance provides the essential link through which the production and post-production information can be gathered and analyzed, so we can have the feedback to the risk management process when this is needed. But let's see who are responsible to document and to communicate throughout the life cycle of the medical device the risks and how we can build a secure and safe communication between all the stakeholders. So, except of the manufacturer and the economic operator, also regulatory authorities, healthcare professionals, healthcare institutions, and patients need to understand what are the medical devices and which is the use of the medical devices, and maybe an inherent degree of the risk. So the communication between all of them are important in order the manufacturer can collect the data and accordingly assess the risk and the benefit. So here are some important activities regarding each stakeholder. And we can see that users like clients and patients, what can do is to observe and detect any issue related to the medical devices. They can document the feedback and provide the feedback to the necessary authority or the manufacturer, and to follow exactly the manufacturer instructions. So what manufacturers should do is to provide the necessary information through the label, through the website, or through the issue of the medical devices, so the user can directly come into contact with them and inform and provide the feedback or any complaint about the medical devices. Manufacturers now and their economic operators should implement a system for post-marketing surveillance, classify feedback and escalate if required, and make a root analysis of all the data collected if required, make a correction plan and action if required, and also preventive or corrective action if required as well. Here is a draft diagram of how a user can detect the issues with the product. They can double check if the product is correct according to the label, if the label between website, issue, and also label of the product are matching together. The manufacturer contact details if are correct, or maybe any new details have not been updated. Instructions for use if are necessary, or maybe they are lacking to provide the necessary information to the user. So any user can be done, or maybe any misuse from the user can also be done because of missing information or because of something was not fully understood. Also, package tampering, manufacturing, packaging, shipping errors, and storage conditions are very important to be keep and transfer this data to the manufacturer in case that some of these factors are not be well determined. Users can request a certificate of analysis, so the manufacturers should have available for giving to the users information on the analysis of the product, with keeping a lot or serial number if applicable, and also the product name, product code, lot number, expiration date of the product. So about now the system of post-market surveillance, which is necessary for all the medical devices, is a combination that can give us information for the post-market surveillance, the post-market clinical follow-up that we will see later, and the vigilance of the medical devices. These activities should be carried out by manufacturers in cooperation with other economic operators. They should proactively collect and review the experience gained from the devices, and also actively and systematically gathering, recording, and analyzing relevant data, so they can keep the quality and performance and safety as well for the device throughout the whole entire lifetime. So the purpose is to have a positive benefit risk ratio, and try, if necessary, to implement and monitor any preventive and correction action. This also applies to legacy devices. So any manufacturer that market only legacy devices has to be draft these post-market surveillance systems. What we do under the system is we update the benefit risk determination and improve risk management. We update the design and manufacturing information if needed. For example, update of the instructions for use or the label of the medical devices. If needed, also, we update the clinical evaluation and the summary of safety and clinical performance of the medical devices. Also, we identify for the need of preventive corrective or field safety corrective actions. And all these are in order to improve the usability, the performance, and the safety of the device. All this documentation and recording should be done in a technical documentation that should be updated accordingly. Now, post-market surveillance plan and report. We have these requirements from MDR according to Article 83 and 84. And as we said before, post-market surveillance report is only for Class 1 devices that the manufacturer should summarize the results and conclusion of the analysis of the post-market surveillance data, and if there is appropriate to take preventive and corrective actions. For the plan now, what we should gather is all the information concerning serious incidents or non-serious incidents and any undesirable side effects. We should track the trend and report this trend if we identify the trend. We will see later on this requirement in more details, and also to have an overview in the literature database or registers for our product or similar devices that can give us more information about the benefit and risk ratio. Also, these include feedbacks and complaints from users, distributors, or reporters. And also, the plan can cover at least a proactive and systematic process to collect all the information we talked about previously, effective and appropriate methods and processes to assess all the collected data. And we should establish suitable indicators and threshold values so we can assess the benefit and risk ratio, and also to take effective and appropriate methods and tools to investigate the complaints and analyze the market-related experience. Also, we should have methods and protocols to manage all the events that are subject to trend reports, to communicate if it's required effectively with competent authorities, to reference procedures to fulfill the manufacturer obligations. This is like systematic procedures to identify and initiate appropriate measures. And later on is about periodic safety update reports that, as we said, is about Class 2A, Class 2B, and Class 3 medical devices, and also custom-made devices with the same classification, and also Annex XVI devices falling Class 2A, 2B, and Class 3. Also, Class legacy devices. The objective of PSUR are to identify and evaluate if there is any change of benefit risk profile and to give information on preventive and corrective actions. Here is a guidance on periodic safety update reports from MDCG that has been published in 2022, and we can follow this guidance in order to set up and clearly make all the requirements for this PSUR assessment. This is done for all the devices already placed on the EU market, and any issues that may impact the product safety information or quality should be clearly documented And also, as we said, to evaluate the benefit and risk by recording non-serious incidents or undesirable side effects. I need to check the technical literature, database, and registries, to include the analysis of feedbacks and complaints by the users, and to give information if there are for similar medical devices. The contents of the PSUR is a standalone document that can have a clear conclusion on the risk-benefit determination, on all the findings of the post-marketing clinical follow-up, and also we use the volumes of sales of the device and an estimation of the population characteristics of the device. Here is a brief explanation of the content. We should have a cover page, executive summary, description of the device and the intended use, grouping of the devices, volumes of sales, size and characteristics of the population using the device, post-market surveillance like vigilance and CAPA information, and post-market surveillance like clinical follow-up information. And in conclusion, we should have the summary of findings and conclusions. Now, the duration of the PSUR requirement. This is expected throughout the lifetime of the device, and depending on the manufacturer, what he has claimed, and in order to the device to remain safe and effective. Some examples here for shelf-life and intended lifetime of the devices is, for example, a single-use device that have an intended lifetime shorter than its shelf-life. So after the placing on the market of the last device of the final production cycle, the PSUR can be terminated when the end of the shelf-life plus intended lifetime has been reached. And example 2, when we have nasal spray, for example, for single use, shelf-life has been, according to the manufacturer, 2 years if it is unopened, but the intended lifetime is 1 month after opening the device. So the PSUR requirement duration is until last unit sold expires, which means 2 years plus 1 month after the opening of the device. So it's 2 years and 1 month. And here is a summary of what are the requirements and where the manufacturer should notify the PSUR according to the class. So class 1 should be available upon request. Class 2 and class 2A and 2B for non-implanted devices should be communicated and sent to notified body, and until Udament is fully operational and functional, they should be sent by email if it's possible. And class 3 and implantable device should be done through Udament when this is functionally available. Here is a brief overview of the requirements depending on the device status. If it is MDD certified and is still on the market, then maybe the PSUR are required. And when the device is still being placed on the market, but the claimed lifetime has been passed, then the obligation of PSUR stops. And the requirements of Udament, as we said before, you can follow the guidance on harmonized administrative practices and alternative technical solutions until Udament is fully functional, that has been published by MTCG 2021. And for class 3 or implantable devices, or class 2A or class 2B, which are IMDR certified, we said before that the notified body should be informed for this PSUR, and this PSUR should be sent to them upon request. So here, Rafaela will take the lead.
Thank you, Manolina, and thank you all for joining us. So as mentioned before, post-market surveillance system encompasses a wide variety of activities, and post-market clinical follow-up is one of them that focuses specifically on the collection and evaluation of clinical data. Post-market clinical follow-up is characterized as a continuous process that updates the clinical evaluation and includes activities that proactively collect and evaluate clinical data from the use of the device after it has been CE marked and placed on the market. The aim of post-market clinical follow-up is to verify that the intended purpose of the population is correct by identifying any potential misuse or off-label use, to monitor the known side effects and contraindications, and to identify unknown side effects and emergent risks, and to eventually verify the performance and safety of the device and ensure the continued benefit-risk ratio, the positive benefit-to-risk ratio. As with all the activities conducted under post-market surveillance system, post-market clinical follow-up can have a significant impact on clinical evaluation, on risk analysis, or on any other part of the technical documentation, and it should be considered in all the parts of the technical documentation, as its results might highlight the need for a change or a modification in any parts of these documents. It is also important to consider that post-market clinical follow-up can provide significant information and insight for market expansion, differentiation, and improvement. And it's an opportunity to adapt your device to the changing needs of the consumers, especially in the case of self-care devices that are considered more consumer goods. Especially for self-care medical devices, post-market clinical follow-up is especially significant, considering the characteristics of these devices. Self-care devices are directly available to the consumer without an intermediate healthcare professional, for example, that has extensive experience on the application and the use of these devices. So that might lead to higher risk of misuse, to combination with products that they shouldn't be used, and to different behaviors that might increase the risk of the device. Furthermore, the long-term safety of these devices might be limited compared to other devices that have more obvious risks, such as implantable devices. So post-market clinical follow-up is an important source for reassuring the safety and performance of the device. As already mentioned, post-market clinical follow-up focuses specifically on the collection of clinical data. And the collection of clinical data and the evaluation is a process that starts in the pre-market phase of the device before it has been placed on the market. And even though post-market clinical follow-up is part of post-market surveillance activities, we should not forget that's an indispensable part of clinical evaluation. As the clinical collection and evaluation data starts from pre-market phase in order to demonstrate the safety and performance of the device and the conformity, post-market clinical follow-up and post-market clinical data collection could be considered as an extension of this process in order to monitor the real-world use, to ensure compliance, and to detect any potential risks that could have an impact again on the clinical evaluation, and it's a continuous cycle that should be applied and monitored, followed. So before we continue with discussing the activities that could be performed under post-market clinical follow-up for the collection of clinical data, I would like to take a minute here to shortly present the strategies used for clinical data collection during the pre-market phase, during the clinical evaluation, in order to have a reference of the approaches used before and after the device has been placed on the market. So one of the strategies used is to present data in the pre-market phase, is to present data on the actual device, and that usually means conducting a clinical investigation on the device. This might be the case, and this might be a requirement for devices that utilizes novel technology where literature is limited. In higher risk devices that might be more invasive or might have some significant risks to the patients and the users, there might be a need for a clinical investigation where there is no sufficient literature either on the device or on similar devices or devices of the same group, or even on the condition and the alternative treatments. And there might be also a need to conduct a clinical investigation when you don't have sufficient enough clinical data on the device. When conducting a clinical investigation, it is important to follow a design and a type that meets your requirement, the endpoints that you want to prove, to consider the intended purpose of the device, the duration of treatment, the risks and the invasiveness of the device, and to also follow the correct regulatory process for the clinical investigation, follow the ISO standards, the regulations, any national provisions to make sure that there will not be an issue on that aspect. Of course, this strategy offers one of the strongest evidence, as it provides direct clinical evidence on the safety and performance of the device. However, the cost and the time are two factors that should be considered. Another commonly used strategy for clinical data collection in the pre-market phase is to claim equivalence with a device that has already been placed on the market. And in that case, you will have to prove that your device shares the same technical, biological, and clinical characteristics, meaning that the devices should have similar design and conditions of use, uses same substances that come in contact with the same tissues, be used for the same condition by the same user, and the list goes on. What's important here is to provide a solid justification for claiming equivalence for any difference that might come up between the devices, and to support this justification with scientific data, with preclinical data, clinical data, or maybe some additional testing that you could perform. You also need to have sufficient level of access to the data of the device, and after you prove equivalence, you could use the clinical data to support safety and performance of the device. And another strategy that I would like to mention is well-established technology, which is the case for specific devices that should meet all the criteria for these strategies. So these devices are usually have a relatively simple, common, and stable design. The generic group has well-studied performance and safety. They are usually considered standard of care, with little change in the indication and the state of the art, and have a long history in the market. And all these criteria should be met in order to follow this procedure. Clinical evaluation is something that all devices should conduct, should have, and the level of access, the level of the clinical data that we'll use depends on the characteristics of the device, the intended use, and the risks of the device, and it falls under the manufacturer responsibility to decide and justify the correct approach. Regarding post-market clinical data collection activities, there is a variety of activities that the manufacturers should select from and apply based on the device characteristics, risks, intended purpose, and the results of the evaluation, of the whole evaluation of the device during the preclinical phase. A very common activity is literature screening, where you identify data on the literature regarding the safety and performance of the device, the specific device or similar devices, or any developments that might be happening in the state of the art that could have an impact on your device. Information can also be collected by registries and databases. There are device or condition or patient-specific registries that the manufacturer can collect information from the real-world use of the device. However, registries are more common in higher-risk devices such as implants. National registries, like from competent authorities, is also an important source of information, especially for safety aspects. Surveys is another very popular post-market clinical activity, clinical follow-up activity. Surveys usually have the form of a targeted, well-structured questionnaire that target patients and users or healthcare professionals, and they collect clinical data. They present clinical data from real-world experience. They are considered time and cost-effective. However, it is significant to consider that depending on the design of the survey and the route that you will follow, you might produce different strength evidence, different kind of strength evidence. And post-market clinical follow-up studies is another activity that is conducted during the post-market phase for clinical data evaluation. It refers to clinical investigations of different design types, depending on the research question and the needs of the device, what you need to prove. And they are common in cases of product in devices that are novel, in cases where changes to the device might happen, in cases where limitations in generalizing findings from previous clinical investigations, such as narrow population or short follow-up, emerging risks, high-risk devices, high-risk population, high-risk application, and they can also be used to supplement with clinical data when the pre-market access has been based on equivalence, for example. When selecting post-market activity, it is important to consider where the need to conduct this activity comes from. Is it a request by the notified body? Is it a gap in your clinical evaluation, in your risk analysis? Where does it come from? And what are you trying to prove by conducting this activity? Do you want to monitor the safety? Do you want to provide more information, more data on the performance to identify new risks? You have to be specific and to provide a rational and a strong justification for selecting its activity and for the appropriateness of its activity. Usually a combination of activities is selected for a robust post-market clinical follow-up system. This information on post-market clinical follow-up are usually summarized in a plan and a report. There are specific guidances for these documents that provide a structure and a guidance. However, as mentioned before, you need to provide solid justification and rational and explanation, and to be specific on the activities that you selected. And what's also important is that you also refer to the technical parts that might need to be analyzed, monitored, or be under evaluation or under the scope of post-market clinical follow-up. And in the report, you will need to summarize all the results, present, analyze, and discuss how they will impact the rest of the technical documentation and what you are going to do about it. So summarizing on the collection of clinical data, it is a process that it starts in the pre-market phase with clinical evaluation and continues with post-market. It's not something that it stops, it's a continuous process that feeds one another. You should use a risk-based strategic approach for data selection and collection based on what you're trying to prove and maybe the strategic plan and the development plan of the device. And your clinical data strategy should evolve with the device lifecycle and regulatory expectations.
So we are going to continue with the vigilance and what are the vigilance requirements based on MDR regulation. So what we should do according to Article 87 is to report any serious incident and to make the appropriate field safety correction action. Is to make the report of the trends of all the incidents that we have checked throughout the life cycle of the product according to Article 88 of MDR, to analyze the serious incidents and all the field safety corrective actions that have been taken, to analyze all the vigilance data, and to check what are the actions that have been implemented. So the first reporting of the vigilance data, what the manufacturer should report is any serious incident that is related to the medical devices, and this is for all the medical devices, and any field safety corrective action that have been taken through the life cycle so far into the union market. Now, as a general rule, there are some reporting dates that should be taken into account from the manufacturer, and the manufacturer should report any serious incident after that they have established the causal relationship between the incident and the device, no later than 15 days that the manufacturer became aware of the incident. Now, in case this incident is serious public health threat, then the report shall be provided immediately, and that means no later than 2 days after the manufacturer becomes aware of this threat. About now the trend reports that should be documented is any statistically significant increase in the frequency or severity of the incidents that are not serious incidents or that are expected as an undesirable side effect. And these incidents can have an impact on the benefit risk analysis. Now, this significant increase should be established in comparison to the frequency or severity of these incidents, and the manufacturer should specify how can manage these incidents and determine any statistically significant increase in the frequency or the severity of the incidents. Now, the competent authorities may conduct their own assessments on these trend reports, and if it's required, to inform the manufacturer for any appropriate measure. The analysis of serious incidents and any action that should be taken actually is when we perform the necessary investigation related to the serious incident, and we have correlate this incident to the medical device. So we should make the appropriate risk assessment of the incident and accordingly to take the field safety corrective action. The manufacturer should cooperate with the competent authorities, and the competent authorities should establish a safe and secure method that this action can be communicated to the patient user or the population in the territory. The same is done by the member states that should take all the necessary steps to ensure that the information regarding a serious incident has been occurred within the territory. Now, the competent authorities shall evaluate also the risks that can be arising from the serious incidents that have been reported, And these criteria can be as the causality, the detectability and probability of reoccurrence of the problem, the frequency of use of the device, the probability of occurrence of direct or indirect harm, the severity of this harm, the clinical benefit of the device, the intended and potential users of the medical device, and of course the population that might be affected from the serious incidents. And now the Commission should implement some acts. These acts should be actually the typology of the serious incidents and the field safety corrective actions, how the reporting of serious incidents and field safety correctional actions can be done, to have some standardized forms for electronic and non-electronic reporting, timelines for reporting the field safety corrective actions, harmonized forms to exchange the information between competent authorities, and procedures for the designation of coordinated authority. And now about electronic system and vigilance. As you know, UDAMED is going to be constructed of 6 modules. The module of VGL is about the vigilance and the post-market surveillance, where they reported of the adverse events and the post-market surveillance information can be done through this portal. But it's not fully functional, so the obligation and requirements that are related to this module will become applicable 6 months after the publication in the Official Journal of European Union will be done. And here are what is imposed by regulation to be reported in UDAMED. So we should do the periodic safety update reports through UDAMED, the reporting of serious incidents and the field safety correction actions, the trend reporting, and all the analysis of serious incidents and field safety correction actions, and all the information between national competent authorities and the manufacturer. Now the post-market surveillance and vigilance module are referring to medical device category and type or groups level that can be specified by IMDN nomenclature code, by device model level, by specifying the UDI number, or by device level like UDAMED ID trade name catalog reference number, or at product level like specifying UDI load batch number or any other specific device that can be related to the post-market surveillance. Now the vigilance module is not available for voluntary use. When it will be released, it will become mandatory. But for now, the reporting can be done to notified bodies or to competent authorities. The economic operators need to continue using the national processes as explained in the guidance documents of MDCG, and the submission of required PSURs and vigilance reports in UDAMED by manufacturer or authorized representatives will start when the VGL module will become mandatory. Now for vigilance reports that have been initiated according with the national process and because of the absence of UDAMED, the subsequent actions when the VGL module will become mandatory will be done in UDAMED. But this is not refers to retrospective registration. So after the VGL module will be available, this means that directly all the serious incidents should be informed by this portal. And in case the vigilance action, which is reported in UDAMED, concerns a legacy divide and not a regulation divide, These legacy devices must exceptionally be registered in the UDI module as referred for the PMS vigilance action to be entered in the VGL module. What we have gathered now from feedback from some manufacturers, and this is related also to a survey that have been performed by Health and Healthcare Inspectorate in Netherlands. Most manufacturers are aware that the MDR requirements for post-market surveillance apply to products under transitional provisions, but PMS is partially implemented and the plans are not well developed. Also, the PMS system is not tailored to the specific type and class of medical devices, and many PMS plans or procedure lacking the suitable indicators or threshold values in order to make the proper risk assessment. Manufacturers also have limited knowledge and skills how to implement and build these PMS surveillance activities, and also lacking a clear understanding what actions should implement after an incident or a trend report should be drafted. Now, the following aspects should be addressed. Has the manufacturer incorporated the PMS system as part of its own quality management system? Does the manufacturer have the required PMS documentation? Are PMS reports or PSURs prepared at a frequency that is appropriate for the nature, intended use, risk profile of the medical device, and specific MDR or IVDR requirements? Does the manufacturer actively and systematically collect and record relevant data on the quality, performance, and safety of the medical device throughout its life cycle as part of PMS? Is the analysis of the collected data structured in such a way that the manufacturer can draw conclusions about the safety and effectiveness of the specific medical device? Are the results and conclusions from PMS used as input for systematic improvements to the medical device or for taking corrective and preventive actions? And last, are the processes that interact with the PMS system carried out in accordance with established procedures? So all these aspects should be addressed by the manufacturer and understand what are the requirements from MDR and also how they are going to build this system of post-market surveillance so they can record, analyze, and inform and take the proper correction actions and inform competent authorities, users, etc. So thank you very much for participating in this webinar, and now is the time for question and answers. Please let us know if you have any question so we can answer to that. And just to give you some more information about our next webinars, here you can join, and there are some links to register if you're interested. These next webinars will be held in French, so enjoy if you are a French speaker. I don't know if we have any question. Let's check. I don't have any open questions so far. So thank you again for your participation, and if you have in the future any coming question, please do not hesitate to contact us.